Howdy, Space Rangers, Captain Phoenix here, and hello 2021. Wow, this has 2020 has been a crazy year, hasn't it? Well, hopefully we can put that all behind us and hope 2021 is at least a fraction better, if you know what I'm saying. Hey, at least we haven't seen any Godzilla health buzz in the sky, am I right? So I figured, for my first video of 2021, might as well talk about the last movie to come out in 2020, that being Soul. So I finally got to see Soul. As of now, I've seen it twice, and I thought I might as well give my thoughts on it. This is one of those movies where I feel like there's so much to say about it, yet I don't feel like I'll be able to put everything I want to say in this video, and that just makes me so angry because I know on future viewings of this video, yes, sometimes I do watch my own videos, cringe. I'll just be like, man, I should have added this point here and there, I should have added this point here and there. So I'll just try and give the best I can. Before I continue though, this video has spoilers. Again, spoilers. If you have not seen Soul, please click off right now. I know the movie's barely like just over a week old, so that's why I'm telling you this. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. So, what I think of this movie, it was amazing, with lack of a better word. It was an almost perfect movie. I remember when I saw the trailer to this movie, way back at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to be Pixar's best movie, probably going to be one of my top 5 best Pixar movies of all time, and I just knew I was going to love it. For some reason, something was telling me I was going to love this movie, and it didn't disappoint. I love this movie. As to whether or not it's my top 5 Pixar movies, I'm going to definitely have to look at my list again, but I do think it has a good shot of being on that list. I definitely do think it could be my top 5 Pixar movies. It really is a good movie. So where do I even start with it? I guess I should start with the animation, since that's the first thing we see. I love the animation here. I love how on Earth everything is so realistic, so like actually there. I even remember when I watched it with my mom and Joe was like playing the piano and they focused on his fingers. She's like, "Oh my God, those look like real fingers." The animation on Earth is so realistic and just so good. Like the textures, the coloring, the environment around them just looks so real, and it's like so realistic is what I should say. This movie really does look good, and it's amazing the way it does it. And even in the Great Beyond, I like how it's a bit more cartoony. Instead of trying to look realistic like Earth, it's a bit more fluffy, a bit more light, a bit more comfy, sort of like what the Great Beyond is. And I like the way the blue blobs are animated. You know that the unborn souls don't have legs, while the dead souls do have legs. I really like that, the way they animated the whole Great Beyond. To me, it's as if they animated the Great Beyond to specifically not look like Earth, to make it as out there as possible. And I just gotta say, they hit the is it the nail on the head or the head on the nail, whatever. And so yeah, again, Pete Doctor, if you're watching this, just know I have great respect for your work. Please do not stop making movies you're good at, because it seems that he's good at making movies that like sort of have a creative. No, it's not. He's good at making movies with creative twist on them. He's good at making movies that have been done before, movies that have had like some sort of spin to them, and he will take those movies and make it his own. Again, this guy has directed a lot of Pixar movies: Monsters Inc., Inside Out, Up, and all these movies are have formulas to them that have been done before. For example, Monsters Inc. Oh yes, we all know the story of the monster under your bed. Well, he takes that story and gives a new twist to it, that monsters come from an office. We wouldn't have thought of that. He took Inside Out, of how everyone has emotions. He gave it a twist. Oh yes, these emotions are actual people in our brain. He took Up, a story of a man losing his wife and trying to learn to find that life again. Boom, he gives it to him. And here it's kind of the same thing. What happens when we die? Well, boom, he gives it a new twist here and shows us about how we should appreciate life and how life has its meaning. I also really like this film because it's one of Pixar's more intellectual films. I know that to some people it may sound like a downgrade, because they're like, Pixar, intellectual? Aren't they a kids studio? Don't they animate movies for kids? And to that I say, you're no longer my friend, and please die now. And so yeah, I really like how this is more intellectual. It makes you think more. It makes you think about life more, about what life is. But the thing about this movie is that, why I say it's Pixar's most intellectual film, is that the way it ends gives you a bit more to think about. Like it kind of leaves the ending up to the audience to say what they think about, and kind of draw your own conclusions. They don't give you the answer. The audience has to give themselves their own answer. So I really like the way they did that. what else can I say before my brain just trails off? Okay, cool. My brain has trailed off. So let's talk about the story. The story is about this 40-year-old man, I think, named black man named Joe. He dies after getting the gig of his lifetime, and he has to figure out a way to get back to Earth. Along the way, he meets up this new person called 22, an unborn soul, and she doesn't want to be born at all because she doesn't find anything about Earth interesting. And so, through a series of strange events, strange circumstances, he and 22 end up on Earth. Joe ends up in a cat's body while 22 ends up in his body. And now they have to find a way to switch back. Now they have to find a way to get 22 back into the great before and Joe back into his body, while at the same time figuring out what the meaning of life is. Very simple story, very simple to understand. Though I don't know if it's simple to understand, because I remember my mom was like, hey, this is a very complicated movie. I don't know if I can get on board with this 100%. I personally understood it and I like the way it went. Again, this definitely seems like it was a movie made for me specifically. Like, this is definitely a movie for the type of people who are like me, who like think about the deeper things, or who like talk about the me in betweens, because I'm an in between guy. For those who don't understand, well, we could have a story about two extremes, right? And you could say one extreme is the good guys and the other extreme is the bad guys. I like making stories where the hero of the story is the guy in the middle. He borrows elements from both extremes and sort of makes them his own, because both extremes do have their own problems, but he sort of makes them their own. Those are the stories I'm into. I'm not into the stories of the hyper extremes and such. And that's what I like about this film, where Joe's not really dead, but he's also not really alive. That I like that. That's a nice touch to it. So yeah. Again, major spoilers. So 22 of it. So where should I even start? There are a few nitpicks I've had here and there in the movie, but these in no way drag the movie down from how good it is. For example, like, seriously, in over centuries, Joe was the only one to get off that conveyor belt. Seriously, no other person just died and is like, oh hell no, I need to get out of here. I need to go, man. Like, how is Joe the only person to get off the conveyor belt? So I found that interesting. I also found like the third act to be a bit weaker than the second act, which is very weird because you guys know I love my endings. And so when I say that the third act is a bit weaker than the second act, that's a shock, because the second act was really good, and I like the way it segued into the third act. Well, of course, we would have the breaking up of the friends. You know, the third act breakup, where I don't like you anymore. I don't like you anymore. Here, it's not even like the third act breakup and they do it by choice. Obviously, they're mad at each other, but they are forced to do a third act breakup. It's not like the story is doing it for the sake of drama. Like, literally, the plot needs them to third act to break up, and Joe goes back at the end to tell her about to go to Earth. So I really like that between Joe and 22. The characters, and so like at the beginning of the third act, we have this moment where Joe is like playing on the piano, where he's remembering all the things from his life. He remembers that he did have a life, that his life actually had meaning. Because Joe, throughout this whole movie, I'll get on the characters in a bit, but Joe throughout this whole movie had this feeling of like, oh, you know, my life hasn't really begun. Something really good needs to happen to me for my life to begin. And that's what I really like about this movie. I'll get on that again. So before I get on what I really like about this movie, let's talk about the characters overall. We have Joe Gardner. He's the main character. Again, he's a 40-year-old black man, and I really like how this movie at least delves into what black culture is in America. I really don't know what black culture is overall, and I may sound like a stereotype for saying this, but I do like how they show the black community in America, about how jazz is a great part of their culture, about how they live, how they go to the barber, how they make friends, and I really love his the supportive characters that I just said. We also have 22, voiced by Tina Fey. 22 is enjoyable overall. I just didn't get that attached to her. I only really started to get attached to her like in the second half of the movie. For the first half, I was just like, she's whatever. And so yeah, I didn't really get into her until she started to actually live Joe's life, and I'm like, okay, now you've hooked me to this character. So she was fine as a main character. I just don't have that much to say about her. Joe is a person who I really like because he actually has a character flaw. His character flaw is that he's so self-observant, so self-absorbent, that not that he's selfish or anything, but he always sees the world as revolving around him, or as he seems that everything should come to him. For example, he has this barber friend who is one of my favorite characters in the movie, where he talks to his barber friend only about jazz, and his barber friend has this whole story that Joe has never asked about how he had to how he was once in the Navy, about how now he wanted to become a veterinarian, but he had to settle for a barber because his kid was sick. And I'm like, this guy had this whole story, and Joe never once asked him. And he's like, how come you never told me a story? And the guy's like, well, you never asked me for my story. And this made me reflect like, wow, that reminds me so much of me because even though I'm an introvert, I like to talk a lot when I'm around people I'm close to. And it just made me remember of how all those times I'll be talking a lot. And I always come back to these guys and I'm like, guys, I remember I had this one friend from school. I'm like, guy, please tell me your story. Please tell me something from home. Because I always feel like such a bad friend when I'm like talking for like 90% of the time and my friend is just like, yeah, yeah, that's so cool, man. And like, well, and sometimes we'll have a topic where we both talk about equally, but most of the time to be about my topic, and I'm like, this hit me on a deep level. Because the Bible's like, you never asked, Joe. You really never asked me about my life. And I'm like, God, I must be such a suckish friend if I never ask my friends about their life. And that's why I always make an effort to ask. So that hit me on a deep level. I also like the mom, or Joe's mom, about how she always cares for Joe and she's worried that he'll go down the same path of his father, of where if he becomes a musician to become too stressful for him. I wish they elaborated a bit more on this, because we got a few flashbacks with Joe's dad, but we just never got to see him that much. I wish we could have seen a few more flashbacks with Joe's dad about how he helped Joe and how he helped like Joe find his passion in life and such. I really wish. Again, they showed a few flashbacks. I just really wish we could have dived into that a bit more. A nitpick, but doesn't detract from the movie at all. Again, another thing I love about Joe is where in the third act he's playing his piano, he's remembering all the moments from his life, he sees that he actually did have a life, there are people he actually cared about, people who actually cared about him, and he remembers that he did have a life, he did have good things, and he did live a life, unlike 22 who never lived a life. And I like how when he realized that, he immediately goes back into the soul plane, or the plane of existence, to go and find 22 so that he could give her a life. She never had a chance to live, but he lived, and we'll get on that as well. So the characters aren't very big in this story. They mostly focus on Joe and 22, and I like that. I like stories where there are few characters but they have a story to tell with these characters. Like I'm not into stories where like they have a big cast of characters and then they don't know what to do with the other characters. I like stories that mostly have one plot. I'm not into movies that have a plot A, a plot B, a plot C, where like it's 3 side stories all at once. That just shows that you're trying to cram way too much into your movie. I like stories that have a simple, straightforward plot A. You know, stuff where you don't have to get your attention dragged all over the place like you have ADHD and whatnot. I really like those stories, and therefore I liked Soul, because Soul focuses primarily on 2 characters, on how the adventure goes from point A to point B. And I just gotta talk about the pacing, because the pacing is so goddamn good in this movie. 10 minutes into the movie, Joe is dead. I know we just spent the rest of the movie trying to find him get back to his body. I also like how this movie balances between the spiritual plane and Earth, about how we get to see enough of Joe's life and also how we get to see a bit of the spiritual plane. Really like that. Again, this movie reminds me a lot of Inside Out, which is a movie Pete Doctor made. It's Inside Out meets Coco. That's what this movie is. And if you mix 2 good movies like that, hell yeah, you got a good movie. And yeah, you just gotta love it. This movie is like Inside Out meets Coco, and it's just so good. It's just so good. And so, yeah, the pacing in this movie is great. 10 minutes into the movie, the plot has begun, and we are already racing to that finish line. And again, I like how it's just one straightforward story. We don't focus on any other characters. We don't have a plot B or plot C. It's just these 2 characters focusing on how to get to the end finish line, and I love that. And so, might as well talk about the other things as well. The other things I thought about the movie. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about was my theory on the movie. I remember when I first saw the trailer, I wanted to do a reaction to the trailer and to do my theory on the movie. However, the problem was I didn't have the time to do that, and so I never made the video. However, I feel like I should say it now, though most of you will say I'm cheating. But I do remember way back when I had a theory that Joe was going to give his life up for 22. That Joe is going to trade his life so that 22 could actually have a life. 22 will get to see what's so beautiful about Earth, and then she'll get to have a life like that. And what do you know? My theory paid off. I was so satisfied when I found that out. And this kind of leads me to that area where Joe now dies. Because I remember in my theory I said Joe is going to die while 22 finally gets to live her life on Earth. Well, that sort of happened. Joe does start to go to the great beyond. However, before he goes to the great beyond, he's given a second chance and is allowed to go back to Earth. And this, and I know a lot of people have had a discussion about this, about whether or not Joe should have died. Because people are saying, he should have died. He learned the meaning of life. He learned he had a good life. He sacrificed his son for 22. he should have died. Other people are like, well, yeah, he's learned that his life was not that was great before, but that he was focusing on the wrong things. Now he's being given a second chance to focus on the right things. Personally, if you ask me, I think Joe should have lived. That was a good call on the people who made the movie, because now it not only gives us more room to think about what happened to Joe, but it also like allows us to think of what will happen afterward. Will Joe continue being a teacher? Will Joe still do his band thing with Dorothy Williams or things like that? It gives us a bit more room to think about. Again, if this movie were made by me, I would have probably ended it with Joe dying, but I'm glad they gave us a choice where we could envision a few more things happening, and I'm glad they gave Joe a second chance. And I know you might say, well, it's a kids movie, of course they won't kill the main character. This is Pixar. They do things like this on the daily, like it's no one's business. I mean, granted, I can't think of the last time they killed the main character, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. But yeah. And then there was another thing I wanted to mention about how everything is sort of in the middle. About how Joe was in the middle. Sorry, not really about the middle, but more about Joe's life. You see, most movies have this issue of where you have a happy ending. And once you have that happy ending, you will never experience pain or sadness in your life. For example, a movie will focus on a hero. Hero has to go through all these trials and tribulations to get to the end. He finally gets to the end, and he gets the girl or something, and it's happily ever after. Like, I will be happy forever now and forevermore. I'll never get bored. I'll never get sad. I'll never get tired or anything. After this is the end of my story, and my life has both begun and ended. I like this movie. I love this movie so much because it plays with that idea. Joe thinks that his happy ending is gonna come when he plays with Dorothy Williams, and that afterward he'll just be playing music for the rest of his life, that he'll be happy, that he'll be rich, that he'll be good. However, that's not the case. After he gets his happily ever after, which is in Act 2, mind you, when he finally plays with Dorothy Williams and he does the music band thing, that's in Act 2. The movie's not yet over. So when he plays with Dorothy Williams and all that, he realizes he's not happy. He realizes he's not satisfied, that he got the happy ending he wanted, but it's not his happy ending. He's not happy with it. And so I really like the way the movie plays with this. And the way it ends elevates that even more. That Joe realizes he's going to live his life to the fullest. That even though he's not going to have a happy ending, because we all experience pain. We all experience sadness. We'll always have those days until the end of our life. Joe realizes that there is no happy ending. The only thing is that there's a finish line. All that depends is how does he live his life until that finish line. And that is such a good message. This film is so subtle and so deep. I love it. This is definitely not a movie for kids, I would say, because kids will just look at this movie and be like, brrr, where are the cars? Where are the talking fish? Where's the monsters? This is definitely a film more geared to adults. And I don't know if you suffer from existential crisis, but if you do, this probably won't be a movie for you. But it's definitely a good movie. I enjoyed it a lot. I like deep movies like this that give you a lot of meanings that allow you to take away something from this movie. Because no matter what, because everyone is different, everyone is unique, and no matter what, someone will come out of this movie having something to take away. It won't be the same as the other person, obviously. Everyone will take away something from this movie, and it will be something different. I took away something different from this movie. My mom took away something different, and my bro took away something different. We all took away something different from this movie, and I loved it. This movie gives you just a whole variety of things to take. And for those reasons alone, I love Soul. It is by far the best movie of 2020. And by God, what a movie to end the year on. It was so good. Again, a few nitpicks here and there, and a few issues that I had. But overall, I don't see why not. This movie gets a 10 out of 10 from me, because why the hell not? Maybe later on I'll give it a 9 or a 9.5, but for now, I'm just so glad I was able to see this movie, and that I'll just give it a 10. It's a 10. I'll probably change it in future, but it's a 10. Is there a top 5 Pixar movie? Probably not. Depends. Anyways, guys, thank you so very much for watching. I'm glad I was able to get this video out. Expect more videos from me in the next week or so. And again, my 3rd year anniversary is coming up on, is it the 17th or 19th of January? I even forget when I started this channel. But when it comes, it comes, and we will receive the Me Movie 3. Hope you guys are hyped to go see the first 2. Thanks you so very much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment to me what you thought of this movie. What did you take away from it down below? And yeah, what did you think of Soul? Do you think it was a great movie? Do you think it was too complicated for you? If so, you're a derp. And yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Hope you did too. Thank you so very much for watching. Again, comment. I want to know your opinions. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Wow. And without further ado, guys, I've been Captain Phoenix, and I'll see you in another universe. Goodbye, my beautiful great rangers.